All right, guys, we're live. It's Justin Stenstrom from Elite Man Magazine, and my guest today is Kelly Gores from healwithkelly.co, the creator of the Heal documentary, which you may have heard of, and also the founder of, well, a number of self-help healing modalities, documentaries, apps. There's a new Well Set app she's come out with. So really just a woman who has a passion for a lot of different things when it comes to the self-help world. So thanks so much for coming on, Kelly.
Yeah, my pleasure, Justin. Nice to meet you.
You too. It's been fun just chatting for a couple minutes before we jumped on. As I mentioned too before we went on, I've heard of you from a few different places. The first time I ever heard your name though was from that Heal documentary, which I don't know exactly when it was. I'm gonna take a guess though. I want to say it was maybe 5 years ago or so that it came out and kind of went like widespread. I think it might have been on like Netflix or Amazon Prime, one of those. And I
Yeah.
forget exactly where I saw it, but I saw it from Anthony because I'm a big fan, as I mentioned, of Anthony Williams, who's a friend of mine. I'd heard he was on it, so then I just watched the whole thing and it was blown away. It was so cool. What made you get into that type of work? Such like a groundbreaking, profound, really, I think, documentary out there that I think has helped a lot of people. Maybe not necessarily specifically from what's said in that documentary, but just even the idea, the concept of being able to heal from so many devastating conditions and diseases out there. What made you get started in having that idea?
Yeah. It was a long lifetime of little moments that led me there. There wasn't, you would assume that I would have gone through a diagnosis myself. I didn't, knock on wood, thank God.
Yeah.
Although that's not fully true. But while I was preparing, I got diagnosed with Lyme disease, and just because of all the knowledge that I had developed leading up to the inspiration to do the documentary, I had this moment where I was like, oh, I could be derailed by the fear and the downward spiral and the, doom Googling of a diagnosis, which you never want to do. But I knew I just checked in with how my body felt. And I was like, okay, there could be some symptoms of like brain fog and stuff like that, but I'm not having acute symptoms. So I'm not going to start to talk about my diagnosis. I'm not going to seek sympathy from other people. I'm not going to get into the fear and cause, just spiral into the drama. I'm just going to go, okay, I feel pretty good. I'm blessed. Let me just tackle it. And I had gotten diagnosed with mold at the same time. So my doctor was like, and this is a tangent because this is not what led me to the documentary, but it was during, it was like my research for the documentary armed me perfectly for this scenario because most people, or if had I not had the 10 years of research leading up to this moment, I would have probably spiraled. I would have called my mom and gone, oh my God, I have Lyme. And then that fear leads to you gather evidence to make yourself right. So I would have attracted more things to be fearful about and evidence to support my rightness. Anyways, I told my doctor, he was like, look, you could go to the best Lyme clinic in Germany, get 3 weeks of antibiotics. You've got resources. Let's send you over there. And I said, well, that seems like a big commitment to go to Europe for 3 weeks, even though I have resources. And I like that doesn't sound fun to flow antibiotics into my body for 3 weeks, but let's deal with the mold and we'll just keep an eye on the Lyme and symptoms. And anyways, long story short, clean the mold out over 6 months via high doses of vitamin C and glutathione and naturally in binders and all of these things. And then I retested for mold. Most of the mold was gone. A new one cropped up. So I cleaned that up, but the Lyme was no longer testing positive. So in that detox process, the Lyme became dormant and it recently flared up again. So it's never like fully out of your system. But it was just like, it was cool because I applied everything that I talk about in the documentary. Anyways, long story short, I had been on movie sets my whole life. I was an actor growing up in Los Angeles as a young kid. And so I knew the power of film for storytelling. And people start, and the acting business is quite detrimental to one's psyche, with all the rejection and everything. So I started just listening to, I started meditating. I started doing all of the things to stay sane in that industry. Started learning about consciousness and the mind and the power of mind and attraction, law of attraction. And ultimately I just learned so much and I became so empowered and I was manifesting and people were like, "What do you eat? What's your workout? How are you so happy? Like, tell me everything you do." And I just wanted to put all my teachers in a film that empowered me. And it became about health and healing because I just became obsessed on this journey of seeing these spontaneous healings and just what is possible with human potential. And I was like, oh my God, these examples of like you shift your perception and miracles can happen in your body and your life. That's the world I want to live in. So that's how the documentary came to existence.
Love it. And it's such a great documentary. I think you did a wonderful job. What are I have a few questions based off of that. So before I dive into a couple of things in the documentary, some of the things that really blew your mind, which I think is the most fascinating really of all the questions. What would you do now, 5 years later or so, if you redid the documentary, if you could maybe fix something within that documentary, or just say if there was a part two, and maybe there is one coming up in the future, but based off of what we've seen in the first one, the Heal documentary number one, is there anything you would change or something you maybe wish you could tweak?
Um, because of the magic, you know, an artist or a creator never wants to like finish anything because it always feels like you could do it better, you know?
Yeah.
But the feedback of course, there's small things that I would have tweaked and done differently, but like breath work, I think is one of the most powerful transformational tools we can have. I may like highlight the fact that like meditation, breath work, these practices that we can do with our own instrument that don't cost a thing have been the most transformative. Like I've had awesome plant medicine journeys, where you travel and you have a facilitator on these things and it costs money. And I've had just as powerful psychedelic through your own breath work on the floor of my living room with, a facilitator. So, or an app or something. So I would have just highlighted like the fact that some of the most potent healing elixirs are actually things in our own body and right outside in nature. So that would maybe be like one more. I talked about it in the film, but otherwise, I really wouldn't change much because, I mean, people stop me all over the world. I was in Abu Dhabi and they were like, "Oh my God, the Heal documentary," like. So it's been this. I think the timing. I nailed the timing. And when I say I mean just like divine inspiration pushed me to release it at the right time. People were ready for it, and then people became more ready for it during COVID. So it's taken on this life of its own and it's had its own little magic. So I really wouldn't change anything. And the highest compliment is, for people that really need to stay out of fear and dig deep on their healing journey, like with a serious diagnosis, they come up to me and they tell me they like watch it 10 times and they learn something new every time. So it really is just really rich with inspiration and empowering wisdom. And that's like just such a gift to get that feedback.
Yeah, sometimes I think like an artist's work, although the artist always feels like it could be better or improved because they're a perfectionist,
Mhm.
almost by, their very essence of being an artist. I think a lot of times it's like the original piece is always better the way it was done because that's kind of how it was supposed to be done, And then like the things that come afterwards for a reason too.
100%. Yeah. Um, Peter Crone is one of the experts in the film. I don't know if you've had him on your podcast, he'd be great.
No, I
Uh,
haven't
but
heard of
he
them.
he's always like, he's all about freeing the mind. They call him the mind architect, but he's always like it couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't, you know?
Mm.
And it's just such a way of like releasing the stress of the I should have, would have, and could haves. It's just like trusting that there's this intelligence to life and you were supposed to make the mistakes that you were made to learn and wake. You know what I mean? Just everything is unfolding in kind of this divine orchestration and to surrender and trust that, there's always these lessons and blessings in the challenges. And so really just accepting life as it's unfolding, even though we think it should be a different way most of the time. It really frees up all this energy and this resistance we have, which causes us stress, which leads to dis-ease.
Yeah. I don't know if, I mean, it sounds like it, but I know in my life too, just going through different hardships and struggles and setbacks and, health challenges in the moment or in the moments of dealing with all those things, it's like the worst thing in the world. But after, when you come out the end of it on the other side, it's like it always seems to be some type of blessing in disguise. Like it makes you the person that you're supposed to be, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everyone I talk to that, and I've talked to a lot that have gone through cancer and come out the other side victorious and live healthy and cancer free for years for the rest of their life. They all look back and as gnarly and terrifying and painful as the fire was that they walked through, they all look back and say they wouldn't change a thing because they became who they are. And a lot of times it taps them into their purpose, and it just makes them realize, reconnect to the beauty of life and the beauty of their loved ones and their, and it kind of just burns out what's not supposed to be in their life. They get really efficient of like what's not working anymore to let that go. So it is this like alchemical process that, as painful as it is, you know, everybody says they wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. So, from your experience working with some of really the most incredible healers, I think you would call them in the world, what are some of the things, and maybe specifically, but not so specifically from that first documentary, just in your work in general? I'm sure it's expanded, exponentially since then. What are some of the most incredible, still amazing, almost like unbelievable things that you've come across when it comes to some of these people, these healers, and not necessarily them per se, because a lot, I bet that most of them wouldn't even say it's necessarily them, but kind of like what they're doing or being sort of a conduit for this type of whatever healing energy, healing power, whatever you want to call it. But what are some of the most incredible things that you've witnessed?
Oh gosh. I mean, with the healers, it's always just stories like with them. I mean, I'm trying to think. One of the stories that inspired me to do the documentary too was I was going to this spiritual center in Los Angeles called Agape, and Michael Beckwith, who was in the film, he's Reverend Michael Beckwith. He was in The Secret. He's been in a lot
Yep.
of documentaries. He's amazing. He's like my spiritual brother,
Yeah, he's
um,
cool.
and one of my greatest teachers. And so I was meditating at the time and going to this beautiful community, and you could also take classes. So I was taking a class, and he was telling us about this woman that was in one of the meditation manifestation classes. And she, at the beginning of every class, they go around and like, what can we support you and pray for you? And like as a community, because the more people pray together, powerful it becomes. So she said, I've got this kidney issue. My kidneys are failing. I'm on this list to get a kidney transplant. I would like the class to pray that I get moved up on the list and get a kidney, like ASAP. And Reverend Michael's like, okay, cool, but why don't we just heal your kidneys? Like, why don't you pray to heal your kidneys? And she was like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, no, 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 no. The doctors say that's this rare kidney disease. There's just no way. There's no potential or possibility for healing. I need a new kidney. And so Michael was like, okay, he saw that she really identified with that prognosis. So he said, okay, well, while we're waiting for you to be moved up the kidney, and while we all pray that you're moving up, um, every time, how many people give thanks for their kidneys when they go pee, when they go to the bathroom? Nobody raised their hands. So he's like, for the next 2 weeks till we meet again, I want everybody, every time they go to the bathroom, which is multiple times a day, I want you to be thankful for this amazing elimination system and all your organs, but especially your kidneys. Thank you for functioning perfectly. And then think of this lady, let's call her Dorothy, and think of Dorothy and her kidneys, and just picture them operating, functioning perfectly. And so they did. And then for her, he gave Dorothy like this some sort of spiritual text to read every day. And then also every time she was meditating, he would say, think of a body part or an organ that is working like really strongly, like your arms or your knees or your heart, is pumping, and just start to like focus your energy there and send that potent energy to your kidneys every day, like while you're meditating for 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. So, anyways, cut to 2 to 4 weeks later, she comes back and she's like, Reverend Michael, Reverend Michael. And essentially, she went to get tested and her kidneys were functioning perfectly again. So,
Wow.
when I heard that, I was like, what? But again, like when I look at, stories of Jesus, I think he was a metaphysician. Like he was a mystic, he tapped into what's possible for all of us and tried to teach us and show us and demonstrate. But when I just like everything is energy. So stories like that, when you're sending intention and when two or more are gathered, and and I'm not a religious person, I'm very spiritual, but it just shows that we can affect the field, and the other thing going to that story is, Joe Dispenza talks about this Yale researcher named Harold Saxton Burr, and I think your audience would like this. Like he was researching, um, we just assumed he was assuming that matter emits an electromagnetic field. So he was testing the fields around ovarian cancer tumors in mice. And he wanted to like test the field and see if he could affect the field and affect the tumor. What he learned at the end of his research was that there was always like a field signature for the mice that had these ovarian cancer tumors, but then he would test mice in the same area, and some of them had the same field signature as the ovarian cancer tumor, but they didn't have the tumors yet. So they had the signature, and then within weeks or a month or so, the tumor would develop. So what he learned was it's actually the field signature, the energy comes first, and then the matter organizes into the energy. So if someone's developing cancer or another disease in their body, that energy, it starts in the energetic field first, and then it manifests last in the physical. So I don't know. I just think that's extremely cool and extremely hopeful. Like it's hard, Western medicine, conventional medicine just treats the physical, the matter, plane. And so much more is possible when we start to treat things and address things on the energetic level. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it totally does. I think like in just my research alone, and I love guys like Dispenza too. I've been reading his book, studying, his stuff for years. But it seems like there is almost an untapped, undiscovered, and he's like on the cutting edge, the forefront of kind of like really explaining it and getting down to like the bones of it all and sharing it with the world, especially the scientific world. But there's still like a whole untapped, I guess, like field of healing out there when it comes to like energy and healing the body through energy first, like that supersedes all just the traditional work on the body stuff first, where it's like we're all energetic beings. I think we're energetic beings having, or spiritual beings having a physical human experience,
Hmm.
which I think
I
most
agree.
people would like you, like I feel like most people in this space will kind of agree with that. The more you kind of learn, it just makes more and more sense.
Hmm.
But I think most people overall, like general population wise, most people would still say overwhelmingly that we're humans, and then we can have like spiritual experiences or whatever. We can be religious, this and that.
Hmm.
But I think it's the other way around. And I really think the more we focus on the energetic, spiritual side of things, the healthier we're going to be in the long term, not only for our mental, emotional health, but actually because it overrides and supersedes the physical health and the physical body. So that to me is like one of the most fascinating things when we're talking about like healing and stuff. It's always like coming to an energetic level and getting beyond just like kind of what science traditional science has told us about like the human body and this organ does this thing and this like if you do this it's like to fix this problem. To me like there's an overarching sort of umbrella here where if you get to that you can really just fix all problems.
Yeah, totally. And another fascinating story, if I think you like these inspiring
Yeah.
stories as much as I do, but it's in the Heal documentary, but I'm only able to touch on it a tiny bit. So I'm going to tell a bit of the story more here, and then people that are fascinated or anybody on a cancer journey should read this woman's book. Her name is Anita Morjani. She's an Indian woman, grew up in Hong Kong. Her book is Dying to Be Me. And what happened is she lost her best friend to cancer. She grew up in a very westernized, obviously exposed culture of Hong Kong. But she was from a Hindu family. It was very traditional. It came time for her to have an arranged marriage. She was like, had all this exposure to modern Western life and was like, no, I want to choose, I'm an independent Western woman. I want to choose who I marry. I want to marry for love. And so she caused great shame to her family and disconnect from, and just friction with her dad. Anyways, cut to her best friend dies of cancer. Then she gets diagnosed with cancer and just has all this fear. But because she's Indian, like she tries all the natural stuff. She goes and does the Ayurvedic doctors and healers in India. That doesn't work. Tries the conventional stuff. That doesn't work. Cut to she's on her deathbed. She's like 85 pounds. Organs are shutting down. She's got lemon-sized tumors from her neck to her abdomen that's like poking out of her skin. Can't even find a vein. The doctors say, look, to the husband, say your goodbyes. Brother's flying in from India, and she goes into a coma. And but in this coma, she has a near death experience. So she was aware of her body, like she was, and all the near death experiences, and there's been millions of them, have some sort of semblance of this same experience where they leave their body, they can see their body, they feel this expansion, then they, maybe go through a light tunnel, or they just go into this other realm, which is kind of, it could be, let's call it, you know, air quotes heaven, but it's they connect with this source energy that feels like this magnanimous love that is beyond human description with words. Like language just can't describe this expansive love, blissful, ecstatic feeling. Anyways, that's where she goes, the other realm, and she encounters this like all knowingness. Like she was aware of her brother flying in on the plane, had like saw him. She was aware of a conversation going down the hall like 40 feet with a doctor she had never met before, and could recount those words. And she had this interaction with the essence of her father. So it was like this telepathic exchange, where she realized there was no judgment, there was no negativity in this other realm. It was just pure love. And this understanding that every decision she made in her life came from fear and fear and this illusion of separation from her dad and everything else. And so, like you said, spiritual being having a human experience, she was back in this spiritual realm and kind of remembered the beauty and the perfection and this divinity that we really are. And her dad said, now go back and live your life without fear. And she's like, I don't want to go back to that body. This feels fantastic up here. But she knew, she said, if I go back, I'm meant to heal. I will heal, and I have, to live out my purpose. So she went back into her body, and within, and recounted all these things to the doctors that are recorded, and they were just like, you could never. There's just no way that you could know that. Like you were in a coma. Anyways, in 3 weeks, no cancer in her body. 5 weeks, she was out of the hospital, and ever since, for the last however many decades, she's been traveling the world talking about it.
Well,
So, and helping other people. So that just story shows that consciousness is everything, our perception. And this is Bruce Lipton talks about it
mm.
in the film. It's like our thoughts and our beliefs, this lens that we look at life, like really, it has the power to turn on and off genes, like that's the science of epigenetics. So our consciousness, our perception, our belief system, our subconscious programming is like everything. And that's where the healing needs to happen first.
Yeah, there's so many great things here. This is one of my favorite topics is NDEs, near death experiences, out of body experiences, whatever you want to call them, um, afterlife. But consciousness, really is the center of all of it, I think. It's consciousness, it's awareness. That's really what I think our soul ultimately is the awareness that transcends, again, this sort of realm, this dimension that we're in, human dimension, human body, but then, can travel into the afterlife, etc., or the near death experience where you're sort of in between. And I don't, have you ever had any experiences like that yourself?
Never a near death. I've had pretty awesome like psychedelic experiences, but
What's
which I
that?
think like give you a glimpse. Like
I
I
think
think they
it
give you,
does, though. I think it's
it's like a
similar.
little lifting of the veil.
Yeah.
Our little human brains can't process the full lifting, or if it does, it's in that form of an NDA and you're forever NDE and you're forever changed. Um, but then yeah, we have to learn to integrate it so that we can, because I think we do touch through these psychedelics that come from nature and everything else. Touch on the greater reality that our brains filter out most of the time because we just couldn't handle that. I don't know, or maybe we have to filter it out in order to learn the lessons and the experiences and the challenges and the growth that our soul needs to go through, and that's why it came here, you know.
Yeah. 100%. I'll tell you a quick story, just a minute or two. But my grandmother passed away about 2 years ago. I was super close to her. She had been dying pulmonary fibrosis, brought on actually by COVID. So she had it before COVID was gonna basically go away for the world. She was one of the last people to really get it bad, and she had it, and it turned into pulmonary fibrosis. She died over the course of about a year, slow, torturous death, really. I
Sorry.
tried everything to try to save her and this and that, and but it didn't work out. But you know what? The more, and I'm okay with it now, but the more I kind of studied it, it's like her time to go was then. And she, through like different friends of mine, psychics, this and that, I was able to sort of speak to her higher self. And she was like ready to move on. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what gave me closure is like, no matter what I was doing, she was ready to go and it was her time. And she was okay with it more than anything. So I had to be okay with it. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, a couple 2 to 3 months after she passed away, I had this really bad like stomach thing going on for like a month, and I just couldn't get. It was like a super super bad, like the worst bellyache you can think of, every day for like a month straight. And I just couldn't get rid of it. I don't know what it was. If it was like a bad viral thing, like a stomach bug, it just kind of lingered. But anyways, I went to bed one night, and I remember, and I've had these weird things in my sleep in the past. Guys from the podcast will know I've had like all kinds of RBD, sleep paralysis for many, many years and like many episodes of those things. I went to sleep though, and it felt like kind of one of those episodes where my whole body started like vibrating and sort of shaking. And I remember sort of like levitating off the bed. So it felt like I was dreaming, but I was awake and I could see like I was in my room. I could see everything in my room. And I felt my whole body like levitating off my bed like a foot or two. And then like I looked over and my grandmother was right there, and it was like the most amazing, like I immediately started crying. It was just like the most emotional amazing experience of my life. It only lasted maybe 30 to 60 seconds. She came, she was fully there, like I see you now, and I'm talking to her and she's like, oh, I miss you, this and that. And she was the closest person I've ever been to my whole life, like there's nobody else. But she's talking to me, and she's like, I can only stay for a minute. And like, I didn't really know what that meant, whatever. But she's like, I can only stay for a minute. She's like, oh, I miss you. And I'm like, I'm crying. She's crying too. It's like, it's emotional. And like the whole, like last year, her life, I was like giving her like 50 different vitamins and supplements, like just having her trying everything to
Yeah.
help her out. And she always had like a funny personality. So one of the first things she says was, I'm like, how do you feel? Like, is everything? She's like, yeah, I'm doing great. Don't worry. She's like, and don't worry, I don't have to take any of those stupid vitamins anymore. And she started laughing. I, start, I started laughing too. But she's like, I just want you to know I'm okay. Like, don't worry about me. I just wanted to say hi. And I remember her like kind of like, I don't know exactly what she was doing, but she kind of like touched my forehead and she touched like my belly area for like a couple of seconds. And she's like, I just wanted to like let you know I'm okay. Everything's like fine. And kind of just like, I don't even know exactly why she was doing it or whatever, but she touched those two areas. And then like as soon as she showed up, she was gone. And that was, she said bye. And she's like, I got to go. It's bye. And I was like, I love you, this and that. She disappeared just like that. And then I woke up and I like, kind of like whatever, woke up from this interdimensional place or whatever it was. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I woke up, she was gone, and I didn't notice it. But like the next few days, I realized that the pain in my stomach was just completely gone, disappeared like that. And then and I wrote it down too. I wrote all the details down, like, a few hours later after I woke up or whatever. I remember looking at the notes again, and I remember, oh yeah, that's right. At the end, she was like kind of rubbing my belly, and it was
Mm,
so weird. But I'll never forget. It was like one of the best moments of my life. But something, she definitely did something in that moment, whatever it was, energetically, spiritually, somehow, to heal whatever was going on. Now,
mhm.
since then, I've tried to, come in contact with her a few times and heal up some other things that hasn't worked. So
Uh,
I can't do it on demand, but it certainly worked that one time, and I just got lucky, and there was something there though. It was pretty amazing.
wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, Joe Dispenza's advanced meditation retreats. We do these like I've only been to one, but I've heard crazy stories from most of them. And they do this like cage healing where there's 8 people and then there's one healy that's lying down. And people recount the craziest experiences similar to that, where these like light beings come.
Yeah,
And much in Joe's fashion, they're like 12 feet, 15 feet tall. And then they're not like warm and fuzzy grandma vibes. They're like kind of like strict healers, like we're coming in to do the work. Is that like
yeah,
whacking people across the. But again, a lot of similar stories and just people having full healings and crazy energetic like vibrations, levitations, all these things. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by all of it too,
It to me, yeah, it's just one of the most fascinating topics. And I've heard about that. In his books, he talks about that. Would have loved to go to one of those retreats to like experience something like that because I believe it over and over again, not just from his meditations, but I've heard from other people doing similar types of meditations and similar work that there are these sort of beings, these like alien type beings that kind of fly in or swoop in when you get to, and I don't know exactly what it is or how to explain it, but it seems like when you change your sort of vibrational level and get to more of like a, like he says, being more like wave as opposed to like a particle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to
Mm-hmm.
like more of like a wavy type of dimensional vibration is when these things are like attracted to you. And I've
Mm,
heard too, I don't know if it was from him or from somebody else, that a lot of people that have done like Reiki become like Reiki healers because they change like their vibrational sort of output, that they start to have more like supernatural encounters too with these types of beings or different types of
mhm.
alien beings. It's just
Yeah. I
fascinating.
I was hanging out with a bunch of intuitives recently and the two like one is like a works for a living as a psychic and one has tremendous gifts, but she's also has tremendous trauma, so she hasn't quite stepped into like just being an intuitive. So she's on her own healing journey, but both of them had like these childhood alien visitations. And I'm like, I did not. I watched fire in the sky and I was freaking terrified, but like I'm fascinated, but I'm like the needle in the eye. I don't know if I could recover. So, um, but what I've kind of there's something to what you're saying because the people that already have whatever that certain cognitive veil in their brain to really, I mean, we all have psychic abilities, we all have moments, and I'm certainly very intuitive. But these two women had like tremendous gifts, and they were both had very similar alien visitation stories from childhood, like terrifying ones, but then they had to like step into their power and create boundaries and they weren't negative beings. It was terrifying for a child to like have their feet dragged out of bed, but I just there's something to that when you're in that field and more open to that other realm or the information from the other side or whatever. Obviously that's a clear entry point.
Yeah. This is amazing, fascinating stuff. I've heard too. Have you heard there's like a documentary too? I haven't saw the documentary, but I've seen a bunch of like YouTube like documentaries and videos talking about it. But I think it's like the children of Indonesia or one of those countries. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
I'm messing up the country. I don't know if it's Indonesia, but it's one of those like kind of like poor countries in that side of the world. And it might be but anyways, it's just like mid early 90s, maybe like 93, 94. They do a documentary of literally a spacecraft, an alien UFO flying into this little school of like maybe 100 kids. You've heard of it.
I did see that. Yeah.
And they're all, so they do like the documentary, like 30 years later, they're all grown up and they like interview them separately and this and that. They're all saying the same thing. These aliens literally flew in and talked to like 50 of these children and just like told them like, yeah, you got to be better to the earth and take care of this. And it's like one of the most unbelievable, realistic, I think, encounters of these like UFO alien things probably in the last century. And not too many people talk about it or know about it, you know? It's
Yeah.
kind of,
It's I think it's in Africa
I think it was this country in Africa, maybe not
because I
Indonesia.
just saw that recently. I was like for some reason having this conversation, I was like, I want to learn more about aliens now. But it was, yeah. And
Yeah,
it's I had full body chills when you were talking about it. So it's wild.
unbelievable. That I forget which I'm butchering the country, but yeah, it just it's wild. And and that's the thing too. I think that's why I brought it up is it seems like children too, for whatever reason, seem to be a little more tapped into like the psychic side and kind of being able to dive into this stuff as well. And I think as adults or as humans, as we become adults, because we're so bogged down by like the heaviness of the world and just all these things we have to deal with, stress and all these things that pop up, that we kind of lose that ability. And not that we don't have it, but we lose the ability to kind of tap into it.
Totally. That's why my conclusion or my, ongoing conclusion, because I'm always learning new things and new layers. And like you said, like the documentary came out 7 years ago. I'm just now thinking of the next documentary. It's not exactly a heal two, but it's about the nervous system and emotions and how to not create trauma and store it in our body, to unpack it later. But all of that to say, like, my conclusion is that healing is like a remembering of our spiritual nature and like that reconnection to our soul and our spirit and our higher self that chose to come in here, a remembering of like that we're here, we are eternal. We come from the source where Anita Morjani went to, and we will return to there, and there is nothing to fear. And we're here and like it's like a classroom. And so to start to remember that we are on the energetic level all one. We have these like fractal perception points in this kind of illusion of separation, but we need those in order to have this human experience and experience all of our senses and emotions and this whole rich. So, like you said, the kids are closer to that other side. They're closer to that experience of coming from source. So it's less obstacles to remembering, you know?
Yeah.
That's why like a lot of them can still remember like past lives and stuff. It's crazy. All of that fascinates me. But
Yeah.
it's like this ultimate, like all healing is spiritual healing and really just remembering that we chose to come here and that all of these experiences were co-creators with, God, spirit, source, intelligence, or whatever you want to call it, with our free will. But also there's a bigger plan and it all works out no matter how it looks
Yeah.
in this lifetime.
100%. Have you ever seen any of the work of like Dolores Cannon? Any of that like past life regression stuff?
I mean, I've heard of her so often. My friend like is taking this channeling class. It's like derivative from her work.
Yeah.
I had one past life regression session with this woman who trained under Wayne Dyer, and there was nothing. And then I had this other, but I've had like vivid dreams as like a Civil War soldier. I've had
Wow.
and then another intuitive from Spain, this couple that kind of reads together. They told me that I didn't have any past lives and I was from this like light planet, and I was just like, God, that doesn't like I had to. I feel like I've been here a million times. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I need to go to a new person and like actually because I'm like, no, I know I have past lives.
Yeah. I know. Well, that's the thing too. And I feel like it's kind of it can be said with like a lot of things in life. If you go to like the wrong person, it'll kind of ruin that experience for you or make you think that it doesn't work or whatever. Just kind of like anything in life. Like if you're taking a vitamin, for instance, and you get like a shitty brand from like a, generic store or even like, a box store retail, and it's like, yeah, I thought it was a good brand, they had a good reputation, but it was actually like cheap, inferior quality ingredients. You're gonna think like that doesn't work. Whereas if you took the real thing, you took it at the right dosage, you took it in the proper form, it actually does work, or it can work really well. Same thing with this. I think there's kind of a lot of people that sort of wish they had a lot of these cool powers that don't. And if you go to them, it kind of turns you off to thinking that it doesn't work at all. But if you go to like the right person, I think it can really, like, I've probably been to, over the course of my life, maybe like 7 or 8 different psychic type of people. And I honestly think I've been to one legit. Well, I know of one legit person. The other
Hmm.
ones, maybe they have, but to me, it just didn't resonate. And I didn't
Okay.
really think I got much from it. But I do know that's a real thing. I just think maybe these people didn't really have kind of the powers that they wish they had, to say,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, I think what I'm becoming aware of is, we've historically had these gurus and people study and worship and idolize and, put on pedestals. And they take, and even just like the Anthony William, he's our good friend. I've witnessed droves of people that fly from all over the world just to be in his presence. So
Yeah.
what the information that he is channeling, that he's giving people, and he's got very strict, like from nature protocols, and like don't eat eggs because they feed viruses and all these other things. And maybe I'm just a little too lackadaisical, but I, my thing is like, our bodies are so intelligent and we are also bio individual. And we've all been conditioned in different cultures, different environments, exposed to different toxins and different foods, different water. And I think the next phase of this like spiritual age or, time in history or society is learning to reconnect to our instrument. Like we're these spiritual beings, infinite divine beings having these contracted 3D human experiences in these physical body, air quotes, physical bodies. And but these physical bodies are so intelligent, um, and they give you feedback. Like there's this experiment where you're playing this card game and there's this research. I need to know the study so that I don't sound just like airy fairy saying it, but it's why a lie detector works. Like before you even, so you're picking a card and maybe you're hooked up to like a shock machine or something, or if you pick a black card, you get shocked, or whatever it is, or the number, and your body starts to sweat like on a minor level. Your body knows energetically what it's going to flip over, if it's a good or bad card, before your mind even sees and can process the
Wow.
information. So, and they do this with like leaves and trees. They have feelings too, like when there's a negative energy or like attack. So all of that to say, our bodies are so intelligent. That's why we have chills. That's why, um, we can sense if we're in tune, or it's giving us feedback in every moment with symptoms. If you eat something that's not right for you, your nose starts running, or you feel lethargic. Like it's constantly in communication. All of this to say, my point is, I think the age of the guru is over. We need teachers. We need these luminaries. We need the Anthony Williams. But what we, as discerning human beings, sovereign beings, are supposed to watch my documentary and tune in with what resonates and what doesn't. My documentary isn't, all for everybody. It's like, but it's going to hit you on something, like dive deeper into that. Anthony William, like I eat eggs when I feel like my body needs eggs, and sometimes I eat eggs and it doesn't feel right. So I'm just, my body is my guru, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, you just learn, your body tells you what it needs, what it wants, what it craves, what is aligned with it energetically, and what's not aligned, as even like with people, good vibes, bad vibes. Someone walks in the room. If you really pay attention, you can feel the field of the room shift, like temperature wise. You could feel if your body like contracts a little or expands, if you feel pulled a little magnetically to this person or retract a little in repulsion. So, all of that to say, the more we become practice awareness and stillness and connect to what our bodies are trying to tell us in every moment, that's this next age of discernment where we can gather information but we pick and choose what it resonates with us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I asked Anthony this a long time ago too, and I kind of forget exactly what he said, but I know he's so focused on, which is great because it's kind of like the, I think this is my kind of own way of deducing his philosophy on healing people. And I think it's essentially like, let's just go with the easiest sort of, not to say it in like a pejorative sense, but like the dumbest, easiest like way for people not to mess up, which is eat this, eat this, eat this. Like a very easy, basic prescription for everybody and hit as many people as possible. But in my own personal philosophy, my own take, I think he's kind of like leaving out some things that he knows about healing with like your consciousness. Kind of more like the Dispenza side of things,
Hmm.
of like tapping into like an like and we talked about earlier, like sort of the umbrella. I think he purposefully doesn't talk about those things because I don't think enough people are ready to sort of work in that manner. So he
Hmm.
just kind of goes with like the lowest hanging fruit and it hits probably 10x more people that way, maybe 100x more people that way. But I think he honestly knows, and I don't know, this is just me guessing. I don't know anything about what his own thoughts, but I think he knows about a greater way of healing, like we've talked about throughout this episode, and that a lot of like these other gurus and not gurus, but like healers have talked about as well. And it's really tapping into like that next level of your consciousness and overriding the system, so to speak.
I think you're probably totally right. Yeah, he's aware that there's that whole, it's again that programming, that perception, those the lens, the trauma that's coloring. Like a lot of these people that he's healing, his protocols are healing autoimmune. It's like on the energetic, emotional level, that's your body attacking yourself. It's like really you attacking yourself on some level of like lack of worth, which we all have. It's inherent. It's just to what degree were you reflected back that level of worthlessness, or not enoughness in your life. And a lot of it later manifests into autoimmune, and we could talk about that, but I think you're totally right. And, the least burden you put on your body, our bodies are designed to heal in every moment. So on this, if it's so physically imbalanced with inflammation, like you said, the easiest path to healing is to lower that digestive energetic burden, take the inflammation out of your body and eat these like whole plants foods, in a very simple way and boost it with some herbs and supplements and give yourself the lowest burden, high nutritional benefit, protocol to get your body healing.
Yeah. And that's a good way to even put it too. If even if you think about it in terms of like actual tangible physical fruits and vegetables and those types of healing foods, that's all energy for the body. And it's like good, easy, quick energy that the body knows how to use and also knows how to fight off different like pathogens and stuff with and get back to like the good energy. So even in terms of like that, if we're looking at just that, that is still energy in the same sense.
Totally. Totally. It's foods that are from nature, from the ground, from a tree. They are literally just sunlight processors. And then translating that as we eat those foods, we're getting the minerals and the energy from the sun, the minerals from the earth and the energy from the sun, which is all our bodies were designed to need. And I still love, Whole Foods Triscuit out of a box because it makes me feel like I'm a child again with, cheese and crackers. And so that's comforting in a way. But like, there's no energetic nutritional benefit from eating anything out of a box just ever. There's no energy from the sun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just something to be aware of. Like, of course, enjoy these like treats that give you some sort of nostalgic joy or comfort, but like you've got to if you want to heal for sure, or if you want to maintain optimal vitality, you got to eat 80 to 90% from nature.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to ask you about well said in just a moment, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. If that's all right.
Yeah.
But just real quickly too, I remembered I wrote this down like a few minutes ago. But have you ever heard of Coot Blackson?
No.
You would really like him. He's an awesome. I think he's from Kenya. One of those, another like one of those African badass guys that just like you can tell just by the way he speaks. He speaks like with a lot of inspiration and hope, and there's a lot of power to his voice, a lot of resonance to his voice. He's right along lines of everything we're talking about today. But his dad actually was some type of preacher or minister or something way back in whatever, like 50 years ago or something in Africa. I think it was Kenya. But his dad had this healing ability. And he came on the show a couple times. Great guy, Coot. But he was telling me about how he witnessed his dad performing miracles basically like all the time back in Africa. We're talking again many decades ago, like before like mainstream kind of publication and mainstream media was around. But he'd like go down the street and people would like I don't know if he witnessed this actually per se, but he knew of things like this where people went up to his dad, like a blind woman, and like he made the woman see, and just like crazy stuff that would just blow your mind was happening like all the time. And Coot was around this like growing up, so he knew of this incredible power of like the healing like power that humans have. And then he asked his dad about it one time, and he was kind of relaying this to me. I asked him something similar that we talked about, but it was basically like his dad told him like, I don't have any like magical powers, son. I just get out of the way and let the healing come through me. I'm literally just a conduit, and whatever happens, like whatever you want to call it, God. I think he called it God. We can call it God. But like whatever you want to call it, he got out of the way and God would just kind of come through and heal whatever person needed to be healed. And he was just there as sort of like the energy conduit of that healing.
Mm.
But Coot said this, and I specifically, he's like, my dad made it very clear that he didn't have any special powers that I don't have, that you don't have, that anyone else doesn't have. We all have this power. It's just simply like getting out of our own way and kind of letting it happen. And I was kind of like trying to like, all right, Coot, that's awesome, but like, how do we tap into that, dude? Like, tell me more. Give me more of the good. So like, I don't think he knew. I don't think Coot knows per se like how to get out of your own way or whatever. But he's sort of like heading in the right direction in my eyes of like he's on that spectrum of I think one day he'll get there, way above everybody else as far as I'm concerned. But essentially, what I'm trying to get at is like everybody does have that to an extent. I just think a lot of the times we get in our own way and kind of got to let things flow.
100%. Yeah. Every healer I know, they're just a channel. They just get out of the way, step to the side, and let the light do its job. But and I think that's like, not to bring Jesus back, but I love the guy. He was trying to teach us the same.
Yeah,
Organized religion used his powers as kind of for control and but he was absolutely all of his messages were trying to inspire people to do what he did and get through the mind and that's why I love the Course in Miracles is it's all about miracles happen when you just shift your perception you know
yeah,
so
100%. It's incredible. So tell me before we wrap things up, what is it you're working on right now? Is it the Well Set app? You got like
yeah, so I'm an investor in a company called WellSet. It's been out. We launched right before COVID. It started as a marketplace to connect holistic practitioners and people because, besides word of mouth, it's just hard to find like good people. Like you said, it's just it's very saturated. You could take there's a lot of like wellness certifications that happen over a weekend and they're not like legit yet. Maybe if they practice, they can embody the wisdom, but it's hard to discern who's good or who's not. So we were trying to create this platform. We did. Then COVID hit and shut down all the one-on-one sessions. So what we did was all these practitioners that had onboarded to use our business to find new clients and everything and make it easy to book online. We guided them into doing these online classes. So because everybody was at home and during COVID and all these wonderful holistic practitioners, they started to teach these online daily classes. Whether it was yoga, meditation, qigong, EFT, hypnosis, myofascial release, all these things that help us relieve stress and drop us into our nervous system, our parasympathetic healing nervous system. So at the same time, Blue Cross Blue Shield invested in us in a accelerated program and so our founder was sitting around the table with all these health insurance and health care executives. And she said, well, what if we have all these classes and these events that we've been doing online with these practitioners? What if we became like the Peloton of mental health, where we offer live and on-demand classes? So long story short, we became an enterprise offering. So for self-insured companies and this Blue Cross Blue Shield Mid-Atlantic region subscribers. We would offer this platform to these companies as a mental health benefit. So employers would pay for all of their team members to have access to this awesome library of content, live and on-demand classes that will help lower their stress, anxiety, and burnout. So that's what WellSet is today. The founder has recently stepped down to do some healing work of her own. And my another investor and board member who runs a VC firm and has amazing experience building businesses in healthcare. He and I stepped in to kind of up level the programming and the product. We're rebranding it to Held because we're like, how do we make this a nice to have to a need to have? And I get people coming to me every day that just got a diagnosis and, are in fear and in stress and in overwhelm of indecision because they're getting all sorts of advice. And so I have to piecemeal resources, or they have to like work with someone that they can work with every day to like help them, lower their stress and come from a place of feeling safe. You can't heal unless you're feeling safe. And when you get a gnarly diagnosis, and a lot of cancer diagnoses these days, you're in fear, and you're stressed and you're just accelerating this disease. So I really wanted to create this space where people feel held on their journey, where we give them the best shot of feeling confident that they're getting the right guidance, that they're tuning into their intuition and making the right decision on treatment for them. If let's say you get a breast cancer diagnosis, we're going to have, these pathways where every step of the way, we're just making you feel safe and giving you the guidance on how to be your own advocate in your oncology appointment so you're not overwhelmed. If you do choose conventional treatment, here are tools to get you through the nausea, like EFT for nausea. Here's tools to help the emotional, breath work to release grief of the diagnosis or past trauma, qigong to move energy and get you in your body. So all of these healing modalities in a very specific guided way so people can feel safe and assured that they're on the right path. And so we take out the overwhelm, they feel support, and we're, bringing in practitioners that are people that I would use and my, partner Andrew would use. Just really the best of the best, amazing people that just embody this work and are here and stepping into they just want to be of service to the world. So we're really excited about this next. So Wellsit exists as an enterprise offering. We're going to release it to direct to consumer. So it's available in a few months once we finish the app and stuff. So I'm really excited about it. And it'll be called Held.
Nice. Oh, so you're changing it to Held?
Held, yeah.
Held. All right, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to checking it out. It sounds like honestly pretty awesome, like something they haven't really put out yet in the market. So I think there's a big space for that. Like there's like obviously you can go on and get something here, get something there, but the problem is you never really, first of all, you don't know how to really combine them, especially when you have something major going on, like say a cancer or some chronic disease. You don't know how to combine them properly, but also you don't know like if this one's going to work versus like the next two or three. And if you have a place where all of them work, there's like 20 or so modalities, something like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And
like
we
at
might
least,
narrow it down just to, lower the overwhelm and just really focus on the ones that are
yeah. Well, I
the
was thinking
most
that
potent.
too. It might be a little overwhelming, but in one hand, kind of like a Netflix type of thing where you could just like maybe preview it for like a minute or two, see what each one's about, and
Hmm.
then they kind of go and deep dive into what they resonate with most. Like they don't need to
Totally.
obviously dive into, but some people just have no idea. Like they haven't even heard of probably half of them. So they're
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm never going to try that. Whereas if you give them a little preview of it, it's like, oh, that actually sounds cool. Let me, get a chance to look at it, preview a little bit, and then see if they really like it, if it resonates.
Totally. And teach them like why EFT, again, just a small little 2-minute clip of like what EFT is and why it works,
Yeah.
scientifically backed,
Yeah.
proven to work, which all of the modalities will be. Because this is why when you learn to meditate, yeah, you can learn, just be like, oh, I should meditate because everybody in the world is meditating and I can
Mhm.
go to Calm and Headspace or whatever. But I learned transcendental meditation and I learned the meaning of what it's doing to me physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And Joe Dispenza, the placebo effect works. Your mind works when there's you assign meaning to something. So like I'm taking a sugar pill, but I'm assigning the fact, like the expectation of an outcome and the meaning, like this pill is going to affect my brain chemistry, release more serotonin. I'm going to feel better after. Even though it's an innate substance, my belief is that this an expectation is this is going to have an effect on me. And it, over 50% of the time it does, as well as the actual chemical. So our brains are the most powerful pharmacies. So the more meaning, you know, we can put this behind something, the more an understanding of why it's working, the more we'll follow through and commit to that practice.
Yeah. One of you get like 20 or so modalities. One of my favorites is hypnosis too. I've been using it since I was like 14 years old. So like we're talking like over 20 years I've been a hypnosis proponent and advocate. But one of the things too, I've talked about this with a friend of mine, Kristen Willmeyer, Dr. Chris. She's a neuroscientist. She's out in California as well.
Oh,
She used to
cool.
work with Dr. Amen, Daniel Amen.
Yeah, yeah.
She was like his lead researcher. But I talked about this. Actually, I still have to post that podcast. But we talked about this a while ago, and I'm like, the next generation, I think, of hypnosis, like especially with AI and all this stuff coming out, and kind of just what you talked about is like the fact that one of the most proven things in science is the placebo effect. We know that that works like 30 to 50% of the time, whatever, like given, sometimes it's higher to 50%, but that's just given like basic generic information about like a sugar pill that we think is going to work.
Hmm.
It'll work almost half of the time. If we combine that with actual scientific, like data driven facts and specifics that we can program into the subconscious mind via hypnosis, via AI, via, getting super technical. I'm just wonder how infinitely more successful we could be with this programming when we have like actual driven data information like programmed into that. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, yeah. Very like using AI to make it very personalized
Super
for you.
personalized and
Yeah.
super technical too. So you could
Hmm.
speak to the subconscious on a technical level and actually tell it like, all right, release this amount of this chemical, that amount of this kind like this, and then
Yeah.
like actually feed it like instead of having to like, stab yourself with drugs essentially or take a bunch of pills, you could tell your body to create those internally. And
Yeah.
we know the subconscious is an infinitely, wisdom and all this stuff, infinitely powerful. I think it could do that to an extent. And I think it could
Totally.
really heal up a lot of things.
Absolutely. And just so we don't poke the pharmaceutical bear too much, it's like or in combination with
Yeah, yeah,
whatever
combination.
again like the modality I never the biggest thing that anybody listening can do is tune into their own intuition. You should choose the course of treatment, conventional or otherwise,
Mm.
that you believe in most strongly to work because of that placebo effect. The more you believe that chemo, radiation, surgery is going to work, the more, but if you believe it's poison, you need to either do some visualization or hypnosis to tell your body otherwise, to program it to be like, nope, this is a healing elixir. It is
Mhm.
going to keep all my other tissues intact and healthy. And that worked for one of the females in the documentary. Like she didn't have any side effects because she was implementing, she had grown up thinking that it was poison. And so she had to reframe
Mm.
and and hypnotize and visualize and all of that stuff. So all of that to say, your beliefs are going to dictate your success. So all these tools can, no matter what path you take, you can use these tools to enhance the outcomes.
Yeah. What's that famous saying? Whether you think you can or you can't, you
Yeah.
you can, or
Yeah.
whatever,
I
whatever the
think it's
hell.
from Gerald Ford or not
Yeah.
Gerald Ford, the guy who's Henry Ford.
Henry Ford.
Whether
Yeah.
you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
All right. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to the new app. I hope you let me know when it comes out. Maybe we can get you back on sometime next year. It was really great meeting you, Kelly. I really appreciate your time. And what's the last send off takeaway message you'd like to leave the audience?
Yeah. I mean, I like that quote we just said. The other in healing, the quote that I've been really, loving right now because just really letting go of regrets and resentments in the past and coming back to the present moment is I think the guy's name is shoot, I forgot his name. But it's a quote that says, in order to love who you are, you can't hate the experiences that have shaped you. So a lot of us like are still in this cycle loop of past trauma abuse, divorce, breakup, betrayal by a business partner, whatever these things that like, bankruptcy, whatever these things that have traumatized us in our life, really getting to a place that life is for us and never against us. Life is happening for us, not to us. And trusting in this like divine plan. And a lot of these healers, the healer in the film, Rob Morgan, he hit rock bottom and realized, he was like about to commit suicide on the beach and he heard the voice of God, like, you used to heal things when you were a kid, like, do that and everything will be provided for you. And he remembered, like, he had shut off these gifts because his parents were afraid of them. And so now he's like this massive healer. Um, and so, all of that to say, like, these challenges and fires that we walk through in life, they're all for a purpose. And it's to get us back in line with our purpose, and or necessary for our strength and our what we're here to do. So I just love that. It's like, to it helps us embrace the shit that's gone down and happened to us. It's like, no, it really happened for us, and
Yeah.
we're awesome and stronger today because of it.
100%. I gotta rewatch the document. There's something, a couple things you mentioned. I'm like, I forgot about that. And throughout the interview, what's the best place for listeners to watch it again? Is it still on Netflix or
It's on Amazon Prime. So it was on
Amazon Prime?
Netflix for 2 years. It was like one of the top documentaries. It's still floating around Instagram as like top 8 Netflix documentaries to watch. But we are on Prime now, which we
Okay.
love.
All right, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to rewatch it soon, but yeah, definitely, guys, take a look at it, take a watch if you haven't yet. It's one of my favorite in terms of like the whole self-help world, one of the best all time, honestly. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but I think it's probably in terms of like its impact in like the personal development space, I'd probably put it right up there, if not higher than The Secret, which blew up, 15, 20 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
I'd say it's right hand in hand with that, if not a little bit more of an impactful documentary. But anyways, again, thanks so much, Kelly, for coming on. Really do appreciate it. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.